Well, how nice to see so many people here tonight. I kind of thought it's a hot night, they won't bother to come out, they'll stay indoors with their air conditioning. And so it's nice to see everybody here. So welcome to week 3 of the Breaking Through into Buddhahood series. So I'll just say a little bit about what's happened before tonight. So in the first week, Dharma Siddhi, can you hear me? All right, good. Yeah, that's great. The first week, Dharma Siddhi introduced us to the whole kind of concept of this approach to Buddhism of breaking through. It's not usually a kind of metaphor that we use in relation to the path very much. Mostly we talk about the path, don't we? The path to enlightenment. That's the metaphor that we often use. Or we might talk about enfoldment, unfolding like the lotus, that kind of thing. That's another metaphor we use. Or we talk about going deeper into the Dharma, or higher mental states, going higher. These are all metaphors that we use for the path, and breaking through is another one that's been introduced by Saddharaja. So Dharma Siddhi introduced us toward that whole metaphor of concept of breaking through. And when he was doing that, it reminded me a bit of when I was 16 years of age. That was 50 years ago. And I was in an Amdram production, a comedy, and I was called upon to break through an enormous sheet of tracing paper. And I had to kind of break through, and there was the audience on the stage, and I had to fight my way. There was all this tearing of paper. It's quite dramatic. So whenever this comes up, I become 16 again for a moment. And then last week, Arthur Siddhi talked about breaking through from negative emotions and into positive emotions. So he talked about greed, hatred and delusion, which are there right at the centre of the wheel of life, moving away from those negative mental states, which turn the samsara around and around. Okay, I'll just put that there, I think. Yeah. And moving towards more positive mental states, like equanimity, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, those kind of mental states that we talk about in relation to the teaching of the 4 Brahma Viharas, which I believe was the theme of the summer retreat. I wasn't there, but I've heard that it was very good. So I'm glad about that. So this week we're going to talk about breaking through from our psychological conditionings, and particularly the ones that hold us back. Not all of them, doesn't have to be all of them, but the ones that kind of hold us back from a decent spiritual life, growth and development, following the path, if you like. So, what I wanted to do is ask you to just call out, let's just brainstorm a bit what you think I might mean by psychological conditions. What sort of stuff might I be talking about here that we need to break through? Don't all shout at once, just...
Upbringing stuff?
Upbringing, the kind of upbringing that you had. That's a pretty basic one, isn't it? Anything else?
Fear.
Our parents.
Fears, the kind of fears that you've got going on in your life. Yeah, that's a good one.
What our parents have led us to believe as children.
What our parents have led us to believe as children. Yeah, that's a very good one, isn't it? Yeah. As a parent, I kind of feel the weight of that sometimes. Yeah.
Your cultural environment.
What, sorry?
The country you are from and culture.
The country that you're from,
Yeah.
that's so important, isn't it? You know, where were you born? What sort of place was it? That's very much to do with your psychological conditioning, isn't it? One more?
The media.
Jonathan.
The media.
The media, very good indeed. Well, all these are on my little list. I've got a little list here which I prepared earlier. I used to say that on Blue Peter, didn't I? So, what country you grew up in? Your work. what kind of work you do or have been doing for a long time. It really moulds the kind of person that you are. Your level of education. Yeah, did you get much of an education? And if you did, well, where did that take you? How did that mould you and affect the kind of person that you are at the moment? Your family culture. So I come from a family where everyone shouted. So if you needed to say something, you had to say it really loudly to get any kind of attention. And it took me a long time to appreciate that that's not how it was for everyone. Your ethnicity. Yeah, what you look like, what colour you are, what your background is, what country you've come from, all that kind of thing. Your ethnicity, your religious conditioning. Were you brought up with a religion or not? And well, how's that affected how you think and feel about the world? Got a few more here. Yes, what TV programs you watched. So yeah, media or movies you watched, books you read, attitudes to money. Attitudes to money. Family I came from, it was there to be spent. And I did realise till I was about 18 that there were other outlooks to money. Your social class, what social class you come from or you think you came from. Your health history, if all your life you've been ill or suffering from something, that's going to really affect the kind of person that you are today. And there's an odd one here, I've put the history of your hobbies and interests. So say for instance you were interested in needlework and sewing throughout your life, that's going to be another one kind of person. If your interest was rugby and sport, you're going to be another kind of person. It's going to affect you in the way that you are. So that's just the kind of ballpark that we're talking about, yeah? Our conditions. Okay. Do that. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to give you a little definition on this, because this whole series comes from Saddharaja. Saddharaja gave a talk in 1969, would you believe? A lot of people here weren't born then, on this whole series, on this whole concept of breaking through. And he came up with a definition of psychological conditioning. Hopefully you can all read it even from the back there, but I'll read it out for you. What he says a psychological conditioning is factors which influence, even determine our mental attitudes and behaviour without our being fully aware of it, or perhaps without our being aware of it at all. So I'll repeat that. Factors which influence, even determine our mental attitudes and behaviour without our being fully aware of it, or perhaps without our being aware of it at all. So these things are going on, they're part of who we are, our makeup, and we need to be aware of them. Because very often we're not aware, we're just the way that we are. I remember when I first came south in, I think I was 21, came south from the north of England, and I couldn't really understand when I went on a bus or a train, while no one talked to each other. They were just behind newspapers or whatever. There were no mobile phones in those days. Where I came from in the north, if you were on public transport, you started talking to whoever you were sat with or near. That's what everyone did all the time. And people would say, where are you going? What are you going to do when you get there? And this wasn't being nosy, it's just how people were in the north. And then I came here and I became aware of this conditioning that I'd had. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to split into pairs. We're going to talk a bit. If you just turn to your neighbour, we're going to talk a bit about some aspect of your own conditioning which you are aware of, that moulds you and the kind of person that you are today.
Well, this looks like quite a hot topic. I was just looking at you all, you look incredibly animated, and I was just thinking which realm of the wheel of life am I viewing at the moment? I think it was very much the human realm, in that you're just talking about, what sort of effect life has had on you, in the kind of conditioning you've had so far in your life. And it's a big topic, isn't it? It's a very deep topic. So, anybody want to feedback any thoughts or experiences or insights that you've had? Yeah?
Yeah, we're talking about money.
Money?
That's a prevalent one that I feel like...
Yeah? Was that a big feature in your life?
In a positive way, both of us was positive.
Yeah.
Plenty of friends who, you know, it depends what your parents were given.
Yeah.
But then also how they treated money.
Yeah. Yeah. Good subject. Yeah, very basic conditioning, isn't it? Money and the use of it. Good stuff. Anything else? Any other insights? Don't all shout at once, will you?
We were both brought up by atheists.
By atheists?
Yeah.
Gosh, wow. How lucky. How do you think that's affected you then, Ray?
Well, I think it's affected me positively because I've always felt free to pursue my own ideas and I haven't felt hampered by
very good, yeah.
Feelings of guilt or anxiety.
Yeah, no family disapproval or anything.
In fact, like Vera said,
yeah,
it was a free thinking environment at home.
Oh, great. That's what a good condition. Fantastic. Anybody else want to add something?
I was talking about the connection between three of them, which was for me around coming from a working class background, and then partly because of that not getting a higher degree of education, like at university, and that affecting how I think in relationship to work and with colleagues who I can perceive as having more authority than me because of their level of education.
That's right. Yeah. So going to university these days is kind of pretty much what almost everyone does, isn't it? But I can genuinely tell you, the word university, it was never spoken in my house. So that's going to affect me in a particular way, isn't it? And surprise, surprise, I never went there. Anything more? One last one?
We had something where Siddhartha and I realised that if you can change your environment, you notice your conditioning much more strongly. Yeah. And you have to come to terms with it.
That's good, because we're going to come on to that, and that's good. I'm glad that's come up. But what we want to do now is have a look at something called Pavlov's dogs. Does anybody know anything about Pavlov's dogs? Yeah? Do you want to say something?
Yes, it's an experiment where I suppose he rang a bell. He kept a dog in his lab. He rang the bell and then fed the dog. Yeah. And he did it loads and loads of times. And eventually, he rang the bell and the dog started salivating. And, without being fed.
So, Ivan Pavlov was a Russian neurologist from the 19th century, and he really changed things a bit in our understanding of what's called classical conditioning. So, he got dogs and kept them in the laboratory, and just before he fed them, he used to ring a bell like this. So he'd ring the bell and the dogs would all come and then they'd have their food. And that went on for quite a long time. And then one day he started ringing the bell and not giving them any food when the bell was rung. He did feed them, but he just fed them at other times. What he noticed is a really long time before the dogs stopped salivating when they heard the bell. Even though they knew they weren't going to get any food on that occasion, the response was already embedded and had become automatic. So that's dogs. So, it seems like a really simple kind of experiment, doesn't it? And quite crude, in fact, you might even think. But at that time, our understanding of conditioning was not very deep. And he broke through in some way in his experiments, which became more and more subtle in relation to that. So I think it's interesting for us. We're not dogs, but in a way we are a bit like Pavlov's dogs, in that this sort of thing is going on all the time in our own lives through our conditioning. So we learn a behaviour, and then we automatically, whenever the bell gets rung, as it were, metaphorically, or the button is pushed, we can just react without thinking about it. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not a good thing. It just depends. So I spend quite a bit of time working in India, and there's a very deep cultural conditioning in India, in that you must look after guests in a way which is way beyond what anyone really needs. And you have to do it, and that's the conditioning, and every Indian person is scripted into that. Isn't that right, Sudipta? Yeah, and it's wonderful because people really do look after you, but to an embarrassing degree. I noticed that when I was there in January, my guests were not only taking me to the train, they'd also produced food for me to eat on the train. They regularly rang me when I was on the train to make sure I was all right, and they'd also arranged for a pickup in another city with a group of people who all came for me, and then there was a whole set of hospitality going on there at that end, and that went on for a whole month. There's just endless chain of hospitalities where people felt very strongly obliged to look after me. Even though I can quite easily look after myself in India, nonetheless, in a way it's quite lovely and wonderful. But also I noticed there's a real downside to it, in that for people who are pretty poor or they haven't got a lot of time, it's a massive burden. And I've seen friends of mine slaving underneath that burden of their conditioning and the expectation that they will do that. So maybe we've got lots of that going, we might have some of that going on in our own lives. So yeah, whenever you have a particular conditioning, and whenever something vaguely similar comes along in your life, you just automatically respond, like Pavlov's dogs. I had a little example of this quite recently. I took my 2 granddaughters to an animal park, a farm park. And you know, you pay your money, you go in, there's lots of animals, goats and sheep and rabbits and all the rest of it, and you can sort of pet them, and my granddaughters absolutely love this place. But when I was growing up as a kid in Wales, until the age of 8, I grew up on a small holding. And from the moment I could walk, I was expected to go and look after animals, which I did morning and evening. And so when I arrived at the farm park with my granddaughters, this sort of animal husbandry kind of kicked in, and I wanted to go round and feed all the animals, put some fresh straw in there, and then turn them out into the field, you know. And it was quite strong, I really noticed that, and it was still there after all those decades. It was an essential kind of conditioning. So yeah, we've got all sorts of bells. We've got economic bells, social bells, religious bells, political bells, and they set off automatic behaviour within us. And there's benefits and drawbacks to these conditioned behaviours. So Buddhism says that these conditionings are okay, but it would be better if you had a choice. To have a choice, to be aware of your conditionings and have a choice in whether you want to engage in these things or not is a much better thing, because Buddhism is about the mind and working with the mind. We don't want to mindlessly just react. I don't want to be going to farm parks and wanting to feed the animals. It's inappropriate now. So I need to be aware of what that is and work with that. So we want freedom and we want creativity. So Bhante Sangharakshita once said that without breaking through of these psychological conditionings, there can be no Buddhahood. We can't achieve Buddhahood and make progress on the path unless we actually break through these conditionings. Doesn't mean we've necessarily got to drop them, but we have to be aware of them and make the choice. So there you are in India, you decide, no, there is a good thing about this hospitality, I will do it, but perhaps I won't do it to a ridiculous degree. Once he's on the train, I'll just let him do what he wants. And you're conscious, you're creative, you're aware, you have a choice. So realizing your psychological conditionings, recognizing them, naming them. Very, very important. That's how we might break through with awareness. So I'm going to say a little bit about that now. I'm going to talk a little bit about awareness. So that's what we're going to look at before the tea break. How we might break through. So there's three main areas I want to talk about. And first is recognizing conditionings and naming them. Second is trying other sets of conditionings. And the third one is awareness and creating space. Yeah. And if we do that, then that might lead to the taste of freedom. And the taste of freedom is very beautiful, it's very satisfying, it's a wonderful thing. We know it when we get the taste of freedom, we know it, we don't have to ask anybody or get a certificate. It's very, very immediate in ourselves. But that we have to work at that, we have to break through in order to achieve that taste of freedom. So let's have a look at these three. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're doing okay. So recognizing conditionings and naming them. So what might that be about, do you think? How might we recognize our conditionings? So yeah, if you're Indian, you have to kind of recognize this hospitality thing, don't you? And decide how far you want to go with that. Even neglect it even for a bit. I've got a friend in India, Dichabodhi, he neglects this quite deliberately sometimes. He just says, yeah, sort it out for yourself. And I'll see you later kind of thing. And it's quite conscious because he knows what deep conditioning this is, hospitality in India. And he knows that I can do that. He wouldn't do that to somebody who'd just arrived in India, of course. It'd be very, very helpful. So recognizing our conditionings and naming them. So that's part of what we were doing earlier, is recognizing our conditionings about money, about our background, our race, our schooling, our upbringing, our education, our class, whatever it is. You have to get to know yourself, don't you? You have to get to know what that is. We had a little tune in the team just before we tuned in and what we were breaking through. And I was talking about I'm trying to break through my reticence to complaining when I get bad service. So, and I think this comes from my working class background, you know, where you never complain, you just shut up and put up. That's what you do. But my partner, she's very middle class, and she has no difficulty. If she's unhappy, she just gets straight on the phone, goes to the man and says, look, I'm not happy with this, I want my money back or whatever, which I never ever do. And so I've recognised that now, and recently my e-bike broke down. And I thought, right, this is the moment. So I rang them up and said, look, I'm not happy with this, it's not good enough, you know, I want you to fix it or I want my money back. And did it in a nice way, you know. And they have. They just said, oh yes, we'll deal with that straight away, sir. So that was a bit of a breakthrough for me. Recognising that I got a conditioning, naming it, and then you're halfway there to working with it in some way and overcoming it. Any feedback on that? Any thoughts coming from that? Dharmachanda?
Quite hard to recognise it unless you talk to others who you trust to feedback or reflect back or, you know, in a kind way.
Yeah.
So that, because I don't know what I'm like unless I...
How might you do that then?
Friendship.
Friendship. The Sangha is very good, isn't it? Sometimes people will take you aside and say, do you realise that you're a perfectionist? And, you know, it isn't really possible. I've noticed when you go on a retreat, there are people who are like really casual about the jobs and just, oh, that'll do, that's good enough. And there are people who are really there, they stay behind and get every dish clean and the table all laid out absolutely perfectly. And you have to find out kind of where you stand in relation to those sorts of things. And often people will let you know, won't they, and hopefully in a good way. So to get feedback on the way that you are is really helpful. Saddharaja was saying about how he likes to not get into so much detail around the Buddhist centre. It's a practice that he's got. I've worked with Saddharaja for years, and we've been friends, and he's fantastic at detail. He's wonderful at detail, but it's inappropriate to get bogged down in that when you're a chairman of a Buddhist centre, because there's so much to do, there's so much detail. So you need to recognise your conditioning. Very, very important. Listen to what other people are telling you. Often people in your family, people that you work with, might be sort of letting you know, but you haven't listened. You haven't listened. I used to work with a guy who was always staying late, and he never left the office till after 8 o'clock. And we used to drop hints, you know, do you want me to bring a sleeping bag in for you, and all this kind of stuff. And he never really got it. He never really realised that he was overworking, and his family were unhappy about it. Okay, number 2, let's have a look at these. There's quite a lot here in number 2. Trying other sets of conditionings. So there's all these, broaden your experience. If you had a particular kind of lifestyle and upbringing, and you've got a particular set of habits, try something else that's completely different. Travel to another country. If you go and live in another country, then you will find that things are very, very different. They do things in a very different way, and you get to see, you know, what your conditioning is like, your country of origin and what that's like. You'll get to know, because it will be different, and that will be reflected back 100 times a day to you. So go to another country, meet a wider range of people, because very often we just tend to stick to the people that we feel comfortable with, don't we? And we don't kind of mix with other kinds of people. I've made a real practice of this, particularly in the last few years, of just particularly going into very different circumstances to what I'm comfortable and normal, and just talking to people and seeing what they say, what their life's like. It's been really enlightening in a way to be able to do that. I've got a bit of a hero in this regard. There was a New York writer from the 1970s and 80s called Studs Terkel. Some of you might have heard of him. He was a remarkable journalist, and he used to go and interview people in the streets, in offices, all over New York, and then he'd write about their lives and put it in a book. And it's so fascinating to read them, and he'd quote them and what they said about life. And he said his love and appreciation for humanity, particularly the humanity in New York, was multiplied many times by doing that. And he became a much broader person as a result. So meeting a wide range of people, de-identification from old conditionings. What might that mean, do you think? De-identification from old conditionings. What might we be talking about?
Letting them go.
Letting them go, yeah. Just say, well, I used to be into animal husbandry, but these days I don't do anything. Or you might say, well, I was brought up a Catholic, and now I'm a Buddhist, or whatever it is. It's where you're conscious about this is what you have had, and you've decided to let go of that, move away from it, move on to something else. It's no longer working for you, but you're conscious of that. You might even say it to people. I met this woman at my gym the other day. She's one of the staff that look after the gym, and she's very, very talkative indeed. Very pleasant to chat to. And she said, oh, I used to be really shy, and I never talked to anybody anywhere. And it's quite hard to believe that, but I do believe her, because she told me how she kind of overcame that and became a different kind of person, because she wanted to. So yeah, you can say, well, I used to be this way and I'm moving away from that now, and making that conscious to other people. Yeah, I lived with this order member called Sukavi, and he went through a period where he started to dress very outrageously in wild colours, and went and visited Glastonbury Festival for many years. But prior to that, he was a professional accountant, and he always wore a tie to work and drove a saloon car. And he turned his back, once he got involved in the Dharma, he turned his back on all that and started dressing outrageously. And it was great to see in a way. it gave him a kind of complete new life. Fortunately, his wife wasn't very keen on it, but there you go. But that's another story. So yeah, going beyond your normal comfort zone, so the way that you normally do things. It's a little thing, if I go to the cinema or any kind of big event or the Buddhist Centre or whatever, I always sit at the back or somewhere on the edge. I don't know, it's just a deep thing. I've got to sit on the edge, I'm not got to be right in the middle. So more recently I've been going right to the front and sitting right in the middle deliberately, and I've noticed that I don't like it. It's not comfortable at all. It's not comfortable. I don't want to be there at all, but I'm going to stay doing it because I think it's good for me to try other sets of conditionings. I don't know where that came from, what that's about, but I'm going to do it. How are we doing for time? Oh yeah, we're okay. Okay, we'll come on to the third one, awareness and creating space. So what this really means is, well, being aware of your conditioning, the kind of person you are, listening to other people, what they say, the feedback you get. If you go on retreat regularly, what you'll start to find, a lot of people say this, is they realise they're quite a different person from what they thought they were. You go deeper into yourself on retreat, and a new kind of person can emerge, and that's really good. On retreat, you've got the space, haven't you, to just be yourself, meditate, have significant conversations with people, study the Dharma. You're able to kind of really look at who you are and experience that. And that's giving yourself quite a lot of creative space to see what kind of will emerge in relation to that. And yeah, I'd say all the major big things that I've done in my life were all not in my comfort zone at all at the time. But I ended up doing them because I went on a retreat and something emerged out of that retreat. I thought, gosh, it'd be great to go and work in India, wouldn't it? But it's really scary. But I would like to do that. And yeah, having space for something to emerge, being aware of yourself, creativity can come in relation to your conditioning. So I had very bad conditioning in relation to money, for instance, money. But these days I'm pretty good with money actually. Don't have much, but I've got enough and I know how to use it well. And that's all come out of giving myself space. Another aspect of that is, well, becoming more aware of the stories that you tell yourself. So I've got a few little choice ones that I heard on a retreat last year. These are actual quotes from people. I was in a study group and this is what they said. Learning a new religion is too difficult. I'm rather stuck in my ways. I can't make friends easily. I'll never be able to get hold of Buddhism. I've no idea how to solve this problem. New experiences scare me. So these were things that actually I heard people say in the group and I kind of wrote them down. And that was just in the normal flow of conversation. People were saying that, and I'm sure none of it's actually true really, but it's a story that you might tell yourself, where you kind of limit yourself and say, well, I can't be creative because new experiences scare me, you know, so it can't happen. I'll just stay in my little box. Or I've no idea how to solve this problem. You know, we often might feel that. We might feel a problem at work, problem at home, problem in our personal lives, or whatever it is. How am I going to solve this? But there'll be a solution out there. There'll definitely be a solution out there for you. But you've got to find it. You've got to get into the creative mode where you haven't just parked it and left it somewhere. I'm rather stuck in my ways. I can't make friends easily. Nonsense. So these are the kind of stories that we can tell ourselves. It might be how you feel at that particular moment, but it isn't how you have to continue being. Okay, so there's a bit about how we might break through into, as I say, the taste of freedom. So before we break for tea, any thoughts and comments at this stage of things that you want to bring in? We've had quite a bit of input from me, so perhaps you just want a bit of space to just get hold of that input.
Can I ask you a question about, when you were talking about the conditioning that you personally have of wanting to sit on the edge or the back, and how you've pushed yourself to sit at the front?
Yeah.
So what, I immediately empathise with that. Not exactly the same. But, I mean, what's wrong with wanting to sit on the back or the side? Or is it just that you need to challenge your conditioning? There's a sort of principle there. There's nothing better about sitting at the front rather than sitting at the side.
No, I think you're right. But what's wrong with it, I think, is that in life there are times when you can't sit on the side. You arrive late or you arrive early or whatever, and you just put where you put. When I work in India, this is often the case. I can't sit on the edge because of the way that things organise themselves. And when that happens, I'm really uncomfortable. I've not been able to I feel limited, and I haven't been able to kind of arrange it the way that I need to have it, kind of thing. So I feel limited. Yeah. And there might even be a bit of fear in relation to that. Oh, I might be stuck up the front, and I don't want that, do I? Kind of thing. So there's a limitation in my thinking in relation to that.
Because what coming across me then is it's a sense of wanting to be in control.
Wanting to be in control, that's what it is, yeah. And actually, if I let go of that and just go with the flow, and wonderful things have already started to happen when I'm right in the middle. And I'll tell you a little story actually. Something happened to me in Pune in India. I got off back of a motorbike and I was going to an event where there was TV cameras, local television and everything. And I was going to sit on the edge, But as I arrived at the event, hundreds and hundreds of people all looked round at me as I walked in. I thought, what's going on here? And everybody, it was clear they were ushering me right up to the stage. And it turned out, no one had told me this, but I was expected to give a talk on the importance of education in India, and then I had to present all the certificates of the various children. And they were coming up, and I was there. Because I was a white guy in town, they were going to use me for that purpose. But of course nobody told me. And so my sitting on the edge and just quietly observing this like an anthropologist, that had to go. It's like, you're going to be centre stage. And I watched myself on TV that evening, on local television that evening. And it looked okay actually. And but what I said about children's education in Maharashtra in a half-hour talk, off the cuff, I've no idea now. I can't remember what I said, but it must have been okay. And then I did so that happens sometimes in life, in that you try to control it and you've got one set of expectations, but life switches it and you have to do something else. And if you're flexible and able to work with that, I think you have a lot more freedom. That's my experience. Yeah. Hello.
I'm going to ask a question, and I think I know the answer, and I think I don't like the answer, but we'll see. So is the goal that you become more comfortable with things that made you uncomfortable before? Or is the goal that you're just uncomfortable more? And if it's the second one, that sucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think uncomfortableness is going to be there right up to enlightenment. There's going to be challenges, there's going to be difficulties. But, just to want to just have a life full of difficulties is a bit perverse, isn't it? Why would you want to do that? Make more trouble for yourself.
Most you don't need to strive for that. That was
You
fun.
don't. That just comes to you, doesn't it? You don't have to strive for that. But if you're flexible enough and big enough to be able to embrace more and more situations, you're able to help other people more, which is really important, and you're able to have a better life yourself. I think that makes a big difference in relation.
The goal is to increase comfort with the inherently uncomfortable.
Yeah, you just become more used to that kind of stuff, so that you think, well, I couldn't do something like that, but then you have a go, and you probably can do it. And it means that you live more fully and completely, and you've got more, you're breaking through barriers that you might have into something more integrated and deeper. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I was working in Calcutta, and I went and worked for a week in Mother Teresa's hospice for the sick and dying. So I just volunteered and let's see what it's like. I was quite scared actually, but I had nursing experience. But what I saw there in that week is the most shocking things I've ever seen in my entire life, period. But by day 3, I was already quite comfortable and used to it all and having a creative time with the patients. But yeah, it was a real practice. The first job I had to do in the morning with a friend was to go around and take out the deceased, the people who died overnight. And I turned that into a practice of reverence and appreciation. And when I was first asked to do that, I thought, oh my God, that's kind of too painful and difficult. I couldn't do that. But then actually I could do it, and it helped them, it helped the ward, and hopefully it had some effect on the deceased. I don't know about that, but when I came away, I thought, oh, I could do this. So I'm going to go and work there again next time I go to Calcutta. Yeah.
By labelling it, can we also be creating more conditioning?
Well, we are creating more conditioning. Of course we are.
And then also, like with the guy who you said who's just working too much.
Yeah.
Is there like an inherent way that if we're not careful, we can take on other people's conditioning?
We can take other people's conditioning, but again, awareness is the key, isn't it? You can't have too much awareness. And I can meet people and I can say, oh, I could see what's going on here, or I think I can, and I can make allowances for people and the way that they are. And that changes how you approach a situation. You're able to be much more compassionate, more helpful, appropriate to people in the way that you respond to them. Okay, everybody, so second half. So all that stuff I was doing in the first half, how did that come across? Was that kind of interesting? Does that get you going a little bit? Some nodding heads? Yeah, you can recognise it? Yeah, it's definitely. Does it feel relevant to you in your life? Yeah. Good. Okay, good. Well, I've got some more. I've got a little bit more for you, and then we're going to have quite a good chunk of time to talk about it in groups. Talk about the material I'm about to present to you. Okay, so when I talk about being creative, having the space to be creative, this word creative, when it comes up for people, sometimes people don't really quite know what being creative is. They kind of think it might be something to do with art or kind of music or whatever it is. That we talk about creativity in that kind of way, don't we? But it's much more than that. It's about how you live your life and approach your life being creative. And one of the best ways to really talk about creativity is to talk about the opposite. The opposite of creativity is what we call the reactive mind. So we've got the creative mind and we've got the reactive mind. And we always have a choice. And the wheel of life here is largely a depiction in all its complexity of the reactive mind. So I'm going to say a little bit about what this reactive mind is, and then I'm going to go on to the creative mind, give you a little bit more kind of how that fits into the Buddhist vision, and then we're going to discuss. So let's have a look at the reactive mind. I'll be talking to you about it, but you'll know all about it. You will have experienced it. We all know about the reactive mind. And if you've done the intro course, you know this material. The reactive mind is the ordinary, everyday mind. Yeah, it doesn't act, it reacts. It's just responding to stuff all the time in not a very good way. It needs external stimulus to get it moving. It's not free and creative. It's mechanistic and repetitive. It's that part of us that's mechanistic. So have you ever found yourself, oh, I've been here before and I don't like it where I am? I find this often when I'm using a computer, and I often get stuck and I think, oh no, I've been here before and it's not good. And I have to recognise I'm in a reactive mind and I need to get out of it. That's usually how I get out of the problem as well. So it's a mind that's unaware. It doesn't know that it doesn't know. Yeah, it's completely unaware of the world around. So going back to that stuff about your psychological conditioning, if you're not aware, you can't know that that's what's going on for you. And that could be quite serious sometimes in your life. You might be getting caught up in things that you really don't want to be caught up in. So the reactive mind is asleep, it's on autopilot, and it doesn't think creatively. It tends to just go round and round in a circle. Yeah, and I remember when I left school when I was 16 and started work, and I remember one of the first things that I noticed about work was how much complaining there was about other people that I worked with. People who've been in the job for years and years, and it was very obvious that they didn't like it. They didn't like being there, but they were there. And I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of my working life working with Buddhists, and it's been completely different. It wasn't like that at all. But towards the end of my working career, I worked in mental health, and I had some good colleagues, but it was the same thing. There was this reactive mind. I worked with one chap who was very good at the job. I worked on this ward for 3.5 years, and he complained about the job for every hour of every shift that I ever worked with him. I mean, I was astounded that he kept it up. He just kept it up. In the morning, so how you doing, Martin? Well, I'm stuck in this place and I'm fed up with it. And he'd keep that up all through the shift. And then the next day he'd be complaining as well, in great detail. And this is the reactive mind. And it seems to be very, very commonplace in the working world, in offices, in teams. A lot of people complain, don't they? And they're unhappy. And this is the reactive mind. They're not doing anything creative about it. They're just blaming other people, other circumstances. They're not taking initiative. So I don't like myself. I'm angry and fed up. My life feels restricted. I hate this job. Here we go again. I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. I feel like a victim. So these are the kinds of things that... So you might notice it in yourself. There might be some little parts of you that can get like that. A few years ago I realised I was... one of the areas I was quite reactive was when I was navigating for someone else who was driving. So if I went on holiday with my partner, she would often drive us there, and she'd say, you know, can you work the route out and tell me where to... This is the days before sat-navs. And I became incredibly reactive. And I don't know what it was, because I wasn't like that when I drove. I don't know what it was, but I was blaming other drivers, I was all this kind of stuff. And I was being a backseat driver, and she said to me, look, you've really got to stop this. And she was right, and I've taken a completely different approach now. But I didn't realise I was doing it. I was just in this automatic kind of pilot. So that's the reactive mind. And it's not a good place to be. And you might, recognise people who are in that. You might recognise aspects of yourself that's in the reactive mind. And then we've got what's called the creative mind, and this is what we're much more interested in. This is, a mind that's not dependent on external stimulus. So you can be in very difficult, challenging circumstances, but you're still motivated. You can be creative, even though it might be difficult. So the creative mind is free. It's not kind of restricted. It can always, it's not dependent on other people and circumstances being perfect. It can always operate. So I am aware and I care for others. I have energy. I found solutions to difficult situations. I feel strong and creative. I can live a worthwhile life. So the creative mind is productive and it's active. It does things. Yeah, even if that just means thinking or it means writing. These are all creative activities. The creative mind responds rather than reacts. So we were talking earlier about having a choice about how you behave. Decided, okay, it's up to me how I behave in this situation. So I'll give you a little bit of an example. We had a Bollywood night here recently, and it was a very good evening. I really enjoyed myself. And I left here at 9:30 and I walked towards my community, which is about a quarter of a mile away, and I was attacked by 6 thugs who wanted to take my mobile phone and my wallet off me. And they were quite violent. And I didn't have either of those with me, so then they seemed to want to beat me up. And I was able to take a creative, I had enough space to talk my way out of the situation, talked my way out of it. But if it was in the reactive mind, I might have got really scared, I might have said something really inappropriate, made it worse. I was able to be mindful enough and deal with my anxiety to be in that situation. I was able, and somehow that communicated itself to them, and they walked away, which was really good. It doesn't always end that way. But it gave me more of a chance to be like that, I think, because of my practice. So I didn't react to the situation, I was able to respond. I don't always do that in life, but on this occasion it worked out well. So the creative mind is the aware mind, yes? It's back to this awareness, mindfulness stuff again. If you're aware, you've got a real chance to always work in a creative way, whatever the situation. And it's not dominated simply by craving and aversion. Oh, I don't like them, I don't like this job, or I really want this, and it's not dominated by all that. So the creative person has the choice to act skillfully in the flow of pleasure and pain that life brings. So when I worked in Mother Teresa's hospice, I met a nun there who I think just completely exemplified the creative mind. Quite an old nun actually, and she'd been there a long time and she had seen absolutely everything, and she was very, very good at responding to volunteers and organising them in a really friendly way, but having to deal with the most awful death and disease and difficulty, but never looked at all kind of ruffled or upset about it all. I thought, wow, really beautiful speech, creative, careful, someone who really worked on their creative mind. So these people are out there, and when you meet one, in whatever walk of life, they're different from, you have a different kind of experience. They help others and they have a good life themselves. So the creative person has the choice to act skillfully in the flow of pleasure and pain that life brings. Life is a flow of pleasure and pain, isn't it, and neutral experiences. And in the flow of all that, it's able to respond creatively and make the best of everything. The creative mind is full of metta. So there's a little quote from Saddharaja here: the creative mind loves where there is no reason to love. So you might be in a really hostile or difficult situation, like I was the other night, and and you're able to exude love, emanate love under those circumstances. So you could say the reactive mind is this wheel of life, and there's the wheel there. The creative mind is what we call the spiral path in Buddhism, which leads to enlightenment. So each time you act skillfully in any circumstances, you're kind of entering this spiral path for a while. And it's a kind of wonderful, whatever life serves up, it's always an opportunity to act skillfully. There's a lot I could say about that, but I better not. And of course that then leads to enlightenment itself, the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha. So that's the thing that we need to bear in mind, is when we're acting creatively, skillfully, we're moving towards the mind of a Buddha. I'll say a little bit more about that in the meditation later on, but now I'd like us to move into groups.